Hi, I'm James Canigliaro, CEO of Dwellworks Living. Thanks for joining the second in our series of webinars about temporary accommodations and corporate housing. We've got a panel of experts today to talk about how to select the best corporate housing supplier. They've got great knowledge to share with you, and I hope you learn a lot. If you've got questions about temporary accommodations or Dwellworks Living, please contact us at any time through dwellworksliving.com. Thanks very much and enjoy the webinar.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you able to join us for this second in our Essentials of Corporate Housing webinar series. Much appreciated. I'm Maura Carey at Dwellworks Living, and honored to again be hosting a panel of some incredible talent in our temporary housing industry. As Megan has indicated, today we are going to explore how we source and service and support the providers who deliver the excellent service that all of you who are fortunate that we're fortunate to serve for our corporate housing needs. We will be talking about how these suppliers are sourced, how they're vetted, how they're managed, how they become great partners, and then of course with a focus on security, safety, and duty of care, for all of us in the industry. We're going to focus in the conversation today on 5 key topics: client expectations, cost controls and cost drivers, quality control, seasonality and availability, and what happens during peak season. And then some look forward from our distinguished panel on trends and expectations in the industry. We're going to talk together for about 45 minutes, and then we'll look forward, as Megan has indicated, to questions that you put in the chat. We were also fortunate to receive several questions from participants in today's discussion, and we'll make sure we get those addressed. And as Megan has indicated, we will answer those that we can today. Those that we can't, we will certainly include in our summary of the session, as well as a copy of this webinar, which will be sent to you all before the end of the week. So without further need, I think we'll just jump right into introductions to our incredible panel, starting with, Jackie Charney, who is the Director of Supply Chain at Cartus, a global leader in relocation services. Jackie's a very seasoned leader who has been in our industry for about 35 years. And she is currently responsible for the sourcing and management and performance of nearly 16,000 providers in the Cartus Global Network, including providers of destination services and temporary living. So welcome, Jackie. Any opening comments?
Thank you. Very happy to be here, Maura.
Great. Delighted to have you with. Next, I'd love to introduce Ray Madronio, who is the CEO and founder of California Corporate Housing, based out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Ray launched the company in 2014 in response to a marketing need for high quality, professionally managed corporate housing service needs for both business travelers and those who are relocating. The business has grown and is among the most successful out here in this region. Ray is also a member of the Corporate Housing Providers Association, CHIPA, which I know many of you are familiar with, where he is an advocate for the standards and quality of our industry. So welcome, Ray. Delighted to have you with.
Thank you, Maura. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Great. Good. And then finally, I'd like to introduce my colleague here at Dwellworks Living, Debbie Woodley, who is our Vice President of Global Supply Chain. Debbie is 30 years young in the industry this year and is, in addition to being the leader of our supply chain efforts, a certified corporate housing professional, CCHP, and a former board member of CHIPA. Debbie is currently the co-lead of the sustainability workshop here at CHIPA, which is an advocacy aspect of CHIPA to help all of our suppliers and partners understand the requirements and to prepare for the sustainability expectations of clients and guests. Debbie also leads a global team of 9 professionals in our supply chain team. That team is spread across EMEA, APAC, and the Americas. And their responsibilities, of course, for sourcing the distinguished partners who are 3,500 strong in our supply chain, and deliver on 80,000 plus portfolio options for clients and guests. So with that, thanks, Debbie, and welcome.
Thank you, Maura. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Delighted to have you. There is lots to cover. Again, as Megan has indicated, we're going to be speaking for about 45 minutes. Please feel free to use the chat function throughout. We'll very much look forward to addressing your questions, and several we hope we've embedded into the conversation today. As I mentioned, we're going to go through a series of sort of core topics, and the panel here will jump right into the conversation. Everything always begins when you talk about supply chain and that what you need to know for the partners you work with around the customer expectations. So we're going to jump straight to Jackie. Jackie, do you want to give us an indication of what the accommodation needs your clients come to you with are, and why it is that Cartus would require multiple suppliers in any one marketplace?
Absolutely, Maura. Thank you. So accommodation needs for our clients can vary greatly. You've got temporary living, your typical 30 or 60-day stay, right up to group moves or intern programs, or perhaps even project-based programs where you've got a group of employees moving, you want them to stay in perhaps 1 or 2 different properties. So that looks a little bit different than the typical 30-day stay. There's the types of accommodations. You've got your corporate apartment, but we get a lot of requests for single family homes, maybe for larger families or for families that have pets. So we do work with suppliers that can accommodate single family home requests. There's a duty of care that our clients expect. That we're offering safe, secure properties, B+ level or better. And if safety ever does become a concern, perhaps in a location that doesn't offer you traditional temporary housing, well, then we may move to a hotel solution, right? That brings me to coverage. Clients expect us to be able to offer coverage where they need it. And some of those locations, can be challenging. If we've got a supplier that says they cover a particular location, well, our expectation is that they do cover that location and can either find a corporate apartment or find temporary housing, or perhaps help us create a solution if one doesn't exist. And those unique requests, right, beyond housing, maybe requests for grocery packs or gift baskets or shuttle service to the office. Property tours particularly if they're working with a group of employees. Maura, to get to the second part of your question, why Cartus works with multiple suppliers in the various different markets, right? A core component of Cartus's temporary living offering is choice. We offer several options to our customers, so we need to have a good selection of options that meet the customer's need. The other key component is a bid model, right? We use a bid model, and we ensure that only properties that meet the customer and the client's needs at the lowest cost are put in front of the customer to make those choices. And lastly, performance-based. Our network is performance-based. We put a lot of time and effort into working with our suppliers, and we really only add suppliers to the network if there's a need based on coverage or based on performance.
Great, thank you so much. Well, we obviously are delighted to have the answer, but when you hear that, right, as a provider in the industry and a distinguished one at that, you hear those requirements. Can you give us an idea of how you respond to them? How is it that you meet the expectations of that client, maybe with a bit of particular focus on that whole duty of care requirement and knowledge about what it is that the guest expects and needs?
Yeah, so duty of care means several things to us when it comes to selecting and furnishing our units. The first thing that comes to mind, and let's be real, is providing the best Wi-Fi possible. A lot of the times it's just another $20 to $30 more per month to get the best Wi-Fi speed in the unit. And for us, it's so worth it. During planned or even unplanned power or Wi-Fi outages, it means communicating those in a timely manner and having backup plans in place. So duty of care is all about selecting the best property within budget constraints, of course. And then within the property, it's selecting the best unit for the guest. We just went through this, a great example of this actually very recently, when a client approached us about securing a 2-bedroom and a long-term lease at a specific property. So we approached that property and we found that there were several 2-bedrooms that we could have chosen. But of course, we chose the most upgraded one. It was on the penthouse level, top floor, very sexy, lots of light. And it faced a quiet tree-lined creek. We chose that one for the client. It took a smaller margin, but we chose that one because that's what we would have wanted. So I coached my teams to always think, okay, what would you want? Because a lot of the times that's what the client would want as well. the care for the guest starts very early in the process. Now, when they're in-house, caring for the guest means really providing the best furnishings and housewares possible. So this could entail, providing a really comfortable and nice mattress, providing the better hamper and hangers, to the thicker and softer toilet paper. We don't want to cheapen out on these things because they could diminish the experience. So, and lastly, duty of care means being accessible and responsive for us. The nature of the service is that it's 24/7, so we definitely try to be responsive during business hours, but during nights and weekends as well, even if the client's just sending a fun text. We realize that we're in a position to build a special relationship with the guest. Many of them are new to the country or new to California, and we know just how wonderful and special California is, and we want our guests to experience that. So whatever it is that we need to do to make our guests be safe and feel comfortable and fall deeply in love with their state as well, we got that, and we can help with that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ray. Yeah, a great sort of table setting from Jackie, and then a good sort of a call and response, letting us know what it is to fulfill those expectations. And thank you for the sort of setup regarding the explanation of duty of care. We're going to go ahead and sort of ask you, Debbie, to expand a little bit on the vocabulary their industry uses. Sort of as a subject matter expert within corporate housing, can you help us with some of the terminology that folks use when they refer to inventory, when they refer to supply chain, refer even to things like duty of care? A quick sort of summary of what folks should expect in interacting with the industry would be appreciated.
Sure, happy to. As Jackie mentioned, our industry, I think, is very unique due to all those diverse types of accommodation solutions that are offered around the globe. Core inventory is something we all hear in the industry. It's defined as proprietary, largely comprised of corporate housing and service departments, where the property is either owned or managed by the operator, or the provider company has taken a long-term lease from the property to include in their risk portfolio or their footprint, meaning they're responsible for the cost of that unit, whether it's occupied or vacant. We utilize this type of inventory in Dwellworks Living in key cities where there's a reoccurring and continuous need. Clients requiring guaranteed availability and immediate confirmation for their travelers. They may opt for what's known as turnkey inventory. This is where the client takes on that risk and commits long-term, rotating employees in and out, and they're responsible for that full cost of the lease term during the lease term. And then there's supply chain or third-party options, and we see those defined as solutions providers procure from another provider in order to offer to their clients and largely to deliver globally and have that extended coverage, as Jackie mentioned. Many solutions providers such as Dwellworks Living, again, we all have to offer those bespoke solutions such as hotels, apart hotels, privately owned homes, co-living options, etc. Those options are often tied to a sometimes remote location where corporate housing and service departments just simply aren't available. But with every request, our goal, as Jackie mentioned, is to offer as much choice as possible to the client that meets their needs and without bias, looking to those client requirements. Yep.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, and thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, a key reminder that to us, hospitality is a passion, but obviously underneath it all, it's, sort of core and good business practices, which brings us to topic 2, sort of the cost drivers in our industry. Debbie, thanks again for that summary of sort of the topicality of our industry. And maybe you could dive a little bit into when an offering is made and brought forward to a client, sort of what are the core sort of cost expectations, and then what kind of adds on to those? What are controllables and not controllables? But again, sort of table set for us how costs are created inside this space.
Sure. As we all know, I think corporate housing initially and still largely is offered as an alternative to a hotel stay. It's usually for a longer term, 30 nights plus, usually. And it provides a multitude of extra benefits comparatively, such as a fully equipped kitchen, more space and comfort, more like a home, usually always for less cost. A fully furnished, accessorized unit is always going to include all the utilities. It often includes weekly or bi-weekly cleanings and a washer and dryer in the unit or in the building. But those additional special requests, as Jackie mentioned, such as pets, if there's an early termination or an unexpected extension, cancellations, all those come with an extra cost in corporate housing. And those should really largely try to be communicated clearly in the option offering to minimize those surprises later. The cost of the solution or unit itself is tied to a multitude of factors. Some of those are the rent amount itself, driven by the year the property was built, whether it's a higher or a lower end rated property, its amenities, its location, and so on. The length of stay plays a big part in the cost. Longer stays often yield a better rate. And those clients' requirements, such as that defined budget, what services and support deliverables they're looking for, all play a factor in determining the cost of that unit. Another big one for the cost of the unit that's largely out of our control is just simply the availability of the unit at a particular property or location. It's ever changing at any given time. The old supply and demand factor plays a big part.
Right, makes good sense. Thanks very much. And I think an interesting comment about the extended stay in temporary living, which I think we've seen a lot of as the long-term rental market has also have been pressured. So folks may end up having to stay a little bit longer in their furnished housing while they look for apartments and housing in their new location. Ray, once again, back to you on the ground game. You've already done a great job for us sort of summarizing how your team finds terrific housing. But when you heard what Debbie had to say, just any sort of color you want to add to what contributes to the cost of corporate housing.
Yeah, so a lot of the factors that Debbie mentioned, those same factors are the same factors that drive up cost here in California as well. Number one is the location. The rate for a one-bedroom corporate housing unit can be seemingly astronomical, but actually very normal if it's in Los Altos, Menlo Park, or Palo Alto. A lot of people that live here may not flinch at their housing costs or their gas or their food prices, but if you're coming from out of town and you're not used to it, you might get sticker shock. So location is number one driver, and certain locations in California definitely carry an extra premium. The second factor would be the length of stay. Debbie mentioned this also, but if a guest is only able to commit for 1 month, most likely that's going to yield a higher rate compared to somebody that can commit for a longer stay, like 6 months, for example. And then lastly, it's the timing. So if your stay dates touch any day in June, for example, then most likely it's going to be at a higher rate because everybody and their mama's in town. I mean, everybody relocates to California during the summer months anyway, when school's out of session, but it's also when the interns are in town and taking up a lot of inventory.
Right, thank you. And we'll circle back to the interns in a second. I think important then, let's go back to you, Jackie. Obviously, you get to bring this story to your clients and customers. How do you sort of set the stage for folks to understand the expectations around what the cost of corporate housing are and to help them define their policies and practices?
Yeah, when it comes to looking at client policy, right, we know our clients are looking to enhance their mobility policies with a focus on the employee experience, on flexibility, and on cost considerations, which we just spoke a lot about. When working with them on their policies, first and foremost, we're going to discuss and promote the value of using Cartus network, right? We strongly encourage that our clients have part of their policy that says they're going to use Cartus's network of suppliers. Our network is performance-based, as I noted before. Our program facilitates sourcing multiple suppliers and presenting multiple options so that the employee has choice. So we look to make sure that that is part of what they're considering. Budgets, we have many clients that work with budgets, which is a great thing, right? We'll share those budgets with our suppliers when we're sourcing. I think the key there that we work with our clients on is to have them allow us to help them set those budgets, right? We have a lot of data at our fingertips. So if they want to work with budgets, then let us work with you on setting what those budgets are. Depending on the policy and the employee group that we're looking at, we also do a lot of conversations around block bookings, right? So if it's a group that's being moved, or if it's interns, which is probably one of the largest groups we work with, where does it make sense to do a block booking versus sourcing one at a time? And then this probably as good a time as any talk about flexible benefits and lump sums as part of policy, right? There's core flex policies where the employee is given the option to choose which services they want to use. There's lump sum where the employee is given the lump sum and they spend that how they see fit, right? So our job in working with them through these policy types is to make sure that we can help fulfill and meet those needs for that core flex and that lump sum to be able to spend those dollars, which generally we're doing a lot of talking about costs, but most times that requires a lower price point.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Jackie. And I think helps us to know that obviously there are always market factors, but there are also controllables. You know, as professionals in this industry, that's our job, right? To sort of always mention that tension in the system between high expectations, obviously, and efficient cost controls. Which brings us to the whole point of what are those controls? Well, how do we manage our business as a business? Again, as a key customer, Jackie, maybe you can give us some expectations about what kind of information do you need? How do you manage supplier performance? What do you look for when you think of quality control and the kind of data you need to manage your business?
Absolutely. We look at a lot of data when it comes to managing temporary living and our suppliers and just making it a better customer experience. So, you know, first and foremost is the customer survey. The customers have an opportunity to rate their experience in temporary living. You know, if surveys are unfavorable, we will ask the supplier to complete a root cause analysis so that we can identify trends and we can work with them to implement solutions. So that's where we start. In addition to the survey, we're going to look at conversion, right? Who's offering options and are those options being presented to the customer? Are they making the cut? Are they getting in front of the customer? Because remember, we don't put all options in front of the customer, only the ones that meet their needs at the lowest cost. So we want to understand, and we want them to understand where they're making that cut, where they're getting in front of the customer. And if they're not, why? So we really drill down on the why, not only what gets booked, but options that get offered. And of course, we want to make sure that if we've got a supplier covering an area, they're responding, right? They are consciously making an effort to respond. Data integrity is critical. And it's critical for a lot of reasons, of course, accurate reporting, but duty of care. So how many times did we have a situation, perhaps a natural disaster, perhaps a hurricane, where we need to make sure that our customers that are in corporate housing are safe and accounted for? And we really drill down on, well, when did they move in? Are they still there? So there's a big component to the data integrity. Pre-arrival inspections, really important. Documented pictures, videos. This is a lifesaver if something comes up later in the process. And lastly, really analyzing cost savings. So, you know, our model facilitates a competitive bid. So looking at cost year over year by market, by location, and understanding what's impacting the cost savings. We know there's a lot that impacts it, and both Ray and Debbie spoke about that, but we want to understand so that we can be proactive when counseling and educating our clients.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jackie. And obviously, no small thing to earn one's way into your supply chain. Maybe Debbie, you can talk a little bit about how, if Jackie and her team says outbound, sort of to the client and corporate environment, what does your team do facing our supply chain? How do we make sure that those quality control expectations are met? What are some of the standards that you set?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a solutions provider, we own the full service experience from sourcing that unit all the way to the final move out. And we have long tenured processes and new SOPs in place to match not only what our clients' expectations are, but also what our own expectations are. As we have all said today, choices is key for our clients, but wieldy controls and unpredictability, it just doesn't sit well with corporate clients, and it really shouldn't. One thing is we require a thorough, as Jackie mentioned, a local in-unit pre-arrival inspection that includes 43 plus checkpoints. We include multiple pictures, all delivered via our pre-arrival inspection app. Cleanliness, quality of the furnishings, technology checks. Those are just a few examples of what's included in that inspection. And we also store them digitally so that they're easily accessible for future use. And they certainly are from time to time. Corporate housing solutions are driven by professionally engaged people versus a hands-off, do-it-yourself travel experience. The providers in our global network are an extension of our global teams. We all have a shared goal of client satisfaction at the forefront of everything we do day to day. They are our trusted partners, heavy on mutual trust, and issues are always going to arise in corporate housing. And those great partnerships allow quick resolution and minimal, hopefully, disruptions for the client.
Great, thanks. Yeah, quality clearly comes from ownership and commitment and knowledge and knowing what's going on in your space. We're going to move that over to you, Ray, since you obviously do all those things and take a slightly different twist on this. When you hear this, you obviously have already leapt in and become a great provider of corporate housing services. This is one of the questions that we were asked, and we continue to invite our guests to put those into our chat. But if one does choose to enter into this world of corporate housing, what are some thoughts that you have for what a supplier really needs to be successful in this space?
Yeah, so in the topic of the relationship between a client and a corporate housing provider, my first thought that comes to mind is that relationship is almost like a marriage sometimes, and not all marriages make sense. And if it doesn't, that's okay. It could be that it could be a culture fit or no fit. It could be that the client doesn't need anything in your location right now, or they may not need your type of product right now. Again, this is totally okay, but my advice is to just keep the relationship there, keep it going, because as we all know, needs change. Now, if you do have temp housing units that you know the client can use right now, I have a lot of thoughts on that as well. But to be best positioned to be invited to the supply chain, my first advice is to keep operating costs low. I mean, per my notes, Jackie has already mentioned budget 8 times this morning or this afternoon. Cost containment is a big topic now, especially nowadays. So keep your costs low and hence your overall rates competitive. No matter how great your offering is, ultimately, we're always in a competitive environment where we're having to bid against our competitors. So you have to really think, do you really need that big office space or those fancy parties or that expensive sales team? Along the lines of keeping costs low, I think we all have to ruthlessly manage our vacancy because vacancy can be the death of any corporate housing company. My second advice is to focus on duty of care, and another topic that Jackie keeps mentioning, duty of care. Focus on that consistent high-level guest experience. And then third, I would say, is to control your reputation. I mean, we're a very small industry and everybody knows everyone. So it could be your reputation that you push through social media or, it's through in-person events, but definitely treat everybody with respect, be nice, hopefully it's genuine, and stay visible. For the properties, this means paying your property owner's rent in full and on time. Never dump a bunch of units back at them all at once. For clients and other partners, again, just be nice, just be visible. And in due time, I think you will be invited to all the supply chain ecosystems to which you are a fit.
Great, thank you. God, what a great summary, and thank you so much. And we're certainly grateful, obviously, for the visibility of yourself and our other supplier partners. It is really important. Folks want to know what's available out there, and I love the sort of emphasis on, sort of manage your business, deliver a great product, but also manage your business. And that, as I just mentioned earlier, is sort of what we're looking for in any great partnership. That sort of moves us into so what's going on in the marketplace right now? Essentially, this is a business that has historically been around peak seasons. Obviously, with COVID and the new returns to work, a little bit of sort of seasonality and the expectations for what do you need when has shifted a little bit, but I think maybe not so much. Jackie, you have already cued into the fact that availability, accessibility, deliver when needed is key. Can you give us an indicator of sort of what Cartus has been watching in terms of what are the volume trends? What do you see in terms of perhaps seasonality and volume overall?
Yeah, definitely. So do we still have summer volume? Yes, we do still have summer volume. We still run into some of the typical challenges such as availability, short window to fulfill, things like that. Although I don't have the crystal ball, I wish I did, to predict volume. What I can share is we did a survey earlier this year. It was our 2024 Global Talent Mobility Survey that we conducted with some of our clients. And what we found from that survey is the mobility volume, it's either increased or it's remained the same, has not decreased. And for most organizations, that's driven by either the lack of local talent or company growth. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Going forward, types of mobility activity anticipated, right? What we're anticipating: business travel, intra-country moves within the country, and more employee requested moves, which I think goes along with the ability to work remotely. Some organizations are, maybe not as many as before, but some organizations are still doing that.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And in a second, we're going to talk about some trends, but that's good to know that essentially, obviously, the market refreshes itself. There are new ways of working, new ways of need that need to be met, and appreciate that long-term view. Debbie, well, your team has managed the supply chain through some tough times. Obviously, coming out of the pandemic, there was, perhaps not quite the sort of strength in supply chain that I think that we've all felt like we've built back to now. What's your thought when you hear about, the ongoing need for availability in a lot of different, formats and shapes? How are you feeling about the resiliency of supply chain right now?
Yeah, I think overall we're feeling really strong and we're feeling ready. Of course, we can all be challenged by a very remote location request or a very unique request where minimal options even exist. But we're fortunate. Our large network, our database, it really enables us to offer multiple choices for each client request. On average, we offer 6 globally, which we're very proud of. We've also seen at Dwellworks Living sort of a reverting back to that regular seasonality, where the first 3 quarters of the year are the busiest, summer being peak, of course, and then that last quarter, definitely the slowest. But we're always in motion. We're constantly in motion, adding new partners, based on current and new needs. We're always growing. Sometimes we're pausing and removing partnerships that might not meet expectations. A real close eye on compliance is always key for supply chain.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very helpful. Obviously, for the trees to thrive, occasionally you have to prune your vineyard. So that's good to know, to sort of keep an overall eye on the full array of the offerings that we have in our portfolio. Ray, we're going to bring it back to you for the local story again. Obviously, you operate in a challenging and expensive marketplace. So how are you feeling about your access to supply, and maybe a few quick comments, as you've already mentioned, on sort of the return, not return, sort of where are we at with what's going on in the intern population?
Yeah, interns. We love interns. Well, many companies have shifted and they no longer pay for intern housing. Instead, they fold that housing allowance into the interns' paychecks and really allow them to just find and secure housing on their own. For the companies that still pay for their intern housing, we see that volume from our perspective, we see that volume down 40 to 50% from 2019 levels. The good news, however, is that it's inching up slowly in the last couple of years. It's been up like 5 to 10%. So it's on the rebound. In terms of the general corporate housing demand in the Bay Area, there is still demand, especially peak demand. We're seeing the peak season, though, to be shorter, to be narrower, whereas before it was really March to October. Now we're seeing largely concentrated to just May to August. So what else has changed? We've already been talking about the high costs and high base rents and high operational costs. So given the high costs and lower volumes for interns, the client expectation now more than ever is to get it right. I mean, it's get it right and do it at a cost savings for them.
It's great. Yeah, talk about our core themes, right? Get it right and do it at a managed cost. So that makes good sense again, and good to know that across the industry, with the variety available, the solutions indeed so far have been able to win that, and that's why we go back to the initial comment that Jackie had made about why you need so much diversity in your supply chain, because you never know where the need's going to arise. So we're going to pick up on that predict the future theme and move into our last topic before we get to our Q&A, and continue to encourage our guests to put their questions in the chat. But when we do think about what lies just ahead, again, thank you, Ray, for sort of table setting what you see. We're going to go back to you sort of for what you may see in your immediate marketplace, and also sort of what have you seen in sort of changing expectations of customers, and what's sort of new to you that wasn't here before, and sort of what do you prepare yourself and your team for going forward.
Yeah, so as many of you have probably heard, there's been the hiring freezes and layoffs in our areas. But behind the scenes, there's still continued hiring and continued growth. If California was a country, it remains the fifth largest economy in the world for a seventh year in a row. California's GDP was $3.9 trillion in 2023, which was a 6.1 increase from the previous year. So from 2020 to 2023, there was big vacancy and rent drop, and then rent stabilized and normal vacancy, and then some big vacancy again. But now the multifamily housing industry is seeing some stabilization that it hasn't seen in recent years. So now the multifamily housing industry, they're increasing the rent by 4 to 6% per year, and they're getting it. They're getting it. So it's a very strong rental market. I mean, the single family homes where we operate, they still average about $2 million to purchase, and interest rates are still high. So I'm sharing all of these snippets with you to basically say that there's continued housing and economic growth in California. Now, in terms of changes, your question about changes from 5 years ago to now, I mean, it's supposed to be, especially in peak season, you get what you get and you don't get upset. But now, clients definitely want more. I mean, they want the shinier property with the technology integrations and the wellness centers for fitness, but they want all of that at better, which is coded for lower rates. The second thing I've noticed is that guests also like to communicate via text, so there are fewer emails. They still like single point of contact, and they want responsiveness even during nights and weekends, even for their non-urgent questions. And then the last thing is regarding bi-weekly housekeeping. We're seeing companies not pay for that as much. And even for companies that do pay for that, we're seeing that the guests opt out of it. And we're seeing this as yet another example of everybody being cost conscious, and maybe they don't want to be bothered because they're working from home.
Thank you so much. I mean, I just love that level of detail that lets one know like how you need to control your business in order to be successful in this business, and at the same time be extremely mindful of the changing behaviors and expectations, and sort of step up your game to be responsive to that. So thank you so much. Jackie, you've already given us a very good idea of some of the policy shifts that you've seen, excuse me, from your clients. But any other thoughts? Are there any other emerging trends that your clients are asking your supply chain to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I'm going to reference back the 2024 Global Talent Mobility Survey that I mentioned in the last question. The top two mobility challenges that are on the minds of our clients are, number one, optimizing the employee experience. So they're looking for their employees to have a consistent experience regardless of where in the world they're moving, right? They're very, very focused on that employee experience and that it's similar. The other thing that came through on the survey is, as we've talked about in every question, a cost containment strategy, right? The clients expect that we're going to offer the lowest cost options available while still meeting the quality requirements and the relocating employees' expectations. So when you think about those two things, right, optimizing the employee experience and cost containment strategy, they are somewhat at odds with each other, right? Conflicting themes. What we're seeing is really a trend towards innovative and flexible mobility policies and trying to strike a balance between these two things, employee experience and cost. That's the magic that we have to make happen.
Terrific. Well, we're going to give Debbie the last word on how we make that magic happen, because that is the nature of the business, right? It's all about exactly what you just described, sort of being very conscious, leaning into the fact that expectation is always going to be there. There's always going to be a high expectation for quality and guest experience. And obviously it's a business service. So there's also going to be an expectation that one knows how to run one's business, and you're paying attention to innovations and opportunity to do that better and more efficiently. So we'll put that and serve that up to you, Debbie. What are some of the responses that you see as a business, as a service business, that enable us to be sort of innovative and ahead of the curve?
Yeah, sure. I would say probably first and foremost, we're very fortunate to have collaborative client and supply chain partnerships that really always work in tandem to try to stay ahead of demands, emerging markets, difficult requests, etc. As a solutions provider, technology plays a big role in delivering not only that choice through a competitive bid environment, as Jackie mentioned before, but also with an easy to use option presentation for the end user, for the person that makes the selection of that option, while knowing our technology must be nimble and scalable, depending on what our clients want. We can customize an end-to-end solution for the client when needed, or provide a more automated service too. So our sourcing platform, Epic, has been in the marketplace since 2008. It's been a means for growth for both our partners, small and local, all the way up to our large global operator partners. We have tenured, experienced, talented corporate housing and destination services teams offering not only technology, very important, but on the ground and remote people support around the world. It's all really, really about trust and partnerships.
Thank you. What a great way to end. Thank you so much. And a great summary that obviously, that the world expects, as Ray's indicated, fast response, immediate response, great accessibility. Excuse me. Obviously, you need a smart technology to make that happen, and a platform that connects, supplier and customer in a really effective way. So thank you. That's a really good place to go. I think we're at the point now where we want to, excuse me again, I apologize, hear questions from our participants. Do you, Megan, have anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, the first one that we are going to throw out there, and we still have a little bit of time, everyone, so feel free to add a couple more if you still want to get a question in. The first one we're going to answer, though, are there any markets globally that are growing, and where do you see a need for more suppliers?
I think I'll give that one to Debbie.
Okay, sure. Well, markets are always growing based on our clients' needs. We've seen a lot of expansion in the last year or so in Asia, markets like Indonesia and India, for example, and then in the US, where there's either a major population shift or large new projects, and also not new, but interesting to see that markets like Silicon Valley, New York, those all remain strong, those core markets.
Thank you. What's next, Megan?
All right. The next one we have says the market drives the cost of real estate, including rentals. Is there any specific information we can provide to help clients better understand the market drivers that impact average daily rates?
Thank you. I think I'm going to have that sort of go back and forth a little bit between, excuse me, Ray and Debbie. I think you've done a great job sort of underlying some of the other cost factors, but maybe a quick reiteration. You can't change what the market is, but what are some of the controllables? Ray, do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, so the reiteration would be it's really the timing of the booking of the stay. Definitely during the summer months, it's going to be peak, so it's going to be higher rates. It's the length of stay, it's the location. So, I mean, who knew like last year would be not as great and the year before to be blockbuster, right? So it's just the invisible hand of supply and demand just really dictating rates. So it goes back to topic number 2.
Excuse me. Thank you so much. And sorry, I was going to mention that to Debbie, but I think I might flip it instead to you, Jackie, because you're the one who has to tell that story back to your clients. Is there anything specific that you look for in terms of the detail that you want from your suppliers to be able to explain the story of costs?
Yeah, absolutely. We rely very heavily on our suppliers to give us, we call them market updates, whatever form or title you want to give it. But, what's going on in your market? What are rental costs doing? Because that, of course, is one of the biggest factors, right? What's temporary living doing in your market? What do rates look like year over year and why, right? Is there anything other than rent that's being looked at? So, on a pretty regular basis, we reach out to our supply chain and we ask them to provide us, whether it's at a specific market level or whether it's more regional in nature. So what's the US doing? What's predominantly happening in EMEA? Are there any events that are going to affect rates? The Olympics or Oktoberfest or certain things. We try to stay ahead of that and we proactively communicate that to our account management team so that they can educate their clients.
Right. Again, I think a terrific summary of sort of what we've talked about, throughout this entire webinar, which is the hospitality experience is key. Everybody wants something memorable. Everybody wants to be a positive advocate for the company that has moved them there. But underlying it all, data, effective operations, efficient ways of managing your business. So thanks for keeping that top of mind for us. Please let me know, Megan, anything else we want to share?
Yes, we have another great one. If there is an unexpected early departure from a leased unit, what can be done to minimize costs to the client?
Debbie, I am going to have that one over to you because I know it's something we manage on a day-to-day
We
basis.
never have those. We never have those ever. No, I think generally the first thing we do is we try to negotiate with that property or with that partner and figure out a solution to minimize that financial responsibility from an early departure. We also make sure that we're offering that option for all of our requests. We put it back on the market, so to speak, so that we can hopefully quickly get it re-rented. I think that's really the most effective strategy that we use. So if it's a partnered option, they put it on the market, we put it on the market, and usually it gets re-rented quite quickly. It helps minimize that cost.
Right. Yeah. Again, I think, like you said, and I think Ray mentioned it in his comments, managing your vacancy is key to all of this. So keeping a weather eye on what's going on in a market and always being available that there might be options and not sort of just making it somebody else's problem, I think is really key. That general awareness is really helpful. Thank you.
All right,
Any other good questions?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think we can squeeze in 2 more. So
Great.
another one, how do you see the development of online booking options by corporate housing and service department providers affecting the industry?
It's a great broad question. Debbie, do you want to start with that? And then I'm going to ask Ray maybe for some input on that as well.
Yeah, I think certainly there are corporate housing and service department options that are largely on those STR type models and being offered for more short term or perhaps leisure. Some of the operators today cater to both leisure and corporate clients in our industry. But many times in certain locations, corporate housing or service department needs that are longer term, 30 plus nights again, typical. They want the flexibility of an open-ended term, meaning they provide the required notice prior to their departure. So they want to keep that option open-ended. Online bookings just really don't adjust to that model easily. So sometimes it can be a good fit, but I would say largely it's just not a great fit for our industry.
Thank you. I think that's right. We've discussed repeatedly duty of care, control, and knowledge of the business. I think that's important. Ray, as a provider, how do you feel about the online booking idea?
Yeah, online booking, you can let it affect you or you can let it not affect you. I mean, theoretically, we can put much of our inventory on bookable in real-time websites, but we choose not to. And it's a very conscious business model decision. We have clients that have told us they have X number, or they're projecting X number of relocations and hence X number of apartments throughout the year. And we tell them we can help with that. So we get ready for that. So if we did put our units and they were booked by somebody, all of them, all the units, I mean, a lot of people would say that's a good problem to have, but for us, it's not a good problem to have because, we would break the client's trust if we said, sorry, we actually don't have any housing for you when we said we could. At that point, we would break our client's trust and we wouldn't want that. So hence we don't put any more inventory on bookable websites.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Again, going all the way back to the start of this conversation when Jackie had mentioned some of the key requirements, and at the very top of that list was, when I need housing, I need to know that my partners have housing. So thank you for providing that assurance. Megan, I think you said one more question.
Yes, that's the last one. And then of course we will get to everyone's via a different mode once we wrap this up. So the last one, are there any US markets that are a struggle for options, in terms of supplier availability out there? If so, how is movement in these areas sporadic or steady? And can you commit to a 30-day or even longer day stay in those places?
Well, I'm not sure we can make commitments on behalf of our client, but I am going to give the rest of that over to you, Debbie, sort of where you see the rough spots in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone probably knows we've got those core markets covered. We have multiple partners in the core and urban markets. It's the remote markets that are very infrequently requested that sort of make a snag in our day-to-day. But I know at Dwellworks, we rely heavily on our database. So we always go to check hey, have we ever sourced in Milford, Michigan, and what can we start from there, for example? Largely, yes, we can provide 30 nights plus in some of those remote markets. But occasionally we do have to have a minimum 60 or 90-day offer if that's all that we can source.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, comes back to the theme. Be great at your hospitality experience, but know your markets and know how to meet the customer needs. So we're going to use that as an excellent place to wrap up our conversation for today. Cannot thank our panelists, Debbie Woodley, Ray Madronio, and Jackie Charney enough for joining us. Obviously, thanks to the Dwellworks Living marketing and production team, and to all of those of you who, of course, joined us today in the webinar. This is a quick reminder that you can apply for a WERC continuing education credit. Thank you, Megan. And this will be also included in the copy of the webinar that we'll be sending all of you before at the end of the week. We'll be sending the presentation, a short survey. We very much appreciate your fast feedback. And then, of course, the answers to your questions. Please also look forward to an upcoming invitation to our last webinar in this series, which we'll do in the early fall. Look forward to having you with us at that time. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.